The arena was buzzing with energy. Fans filled every seat, their cheers echoing through the stadium like thunder. It wasn't just any basketball game. It was a clash of titans. On one side stood Sheryl Swoopes, the veteran legend who had ruled the court for years. Her name alone carried weight. She was fierce, competitive, and still proving she could play at the highest level even in her mid-30s. On the other side was Caitlin Clark, the new star on the block. Younger but no less talented, Caitlin had taken the league by storm with her sharp shooting and fearless attitude. As the players warmed up, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Sheryl moved across the court with purpose, her eyes locked on the basket as she practiced her signature moves. She was intense, focused, and clearly out to prove something tonight. Across the court, Caitlin dribbled effortlessly, sinking three-pointers, with precision that made the crowd gasp. Every shot seemed smoother than the last, and whispers spread among the fans about how unstoppable she looked. But then, something happened. A moment that would spark endless conversations later. As Sheryl stretched near the sidelines, she glanced over at Caitlin, who was laughing with her teammates after nailing another perfect shot. For a split second, their eyes met. Cheryl's jaw tightened slightly, and though she tried to hide it, there was unmistakable fire in her gaze. Then came the comment. Cameras caught Sheryl muttering under her breath, loud enough for those nearby to hear, "My 34 is better than her 35. Just like that, the atmosphere shifted. Reporters perked up, fans leaned closer, and social media lit up faster than anyone could have predicted. Within minutes, hashtags like Sheryl Swoopes vs Clark and "On Our Age Ain't Nothing But a Number" were trending everywhere. Backstage, the buzz only grew louder. Some people thought Cheryl's remark was playful trash talk, a sign of healthy competition. Others saw it as a dig, questioning whether Caitlin deserved all the hype surrounding her. Either way, everyone agreed on one thing. This game had just become must-watch television. When the whistle blew to signal the start of the match, both teams hit the floor running. From the opening tip-off, it was clear this wasn't going to be an ordinary game. Sheryl took charge right away, driving hard to the basket and setting up plays for her teammates. She played with the kind of intensity you'd expect from someone defending their legacy. Every pass, every steal, every point she scored felt personal, as if she was sending a message not just to Caitlin, but to anyone who doubted her place in the sport. Caitlin, however, wasn't about to back down. If anything, Cheryl's words seemed to fuel her even more. With each possession, she showcased why so many considered her the future of basketball. Her quick feet left defenders stumbling, and her long-range shots found nothing but net. The crowd roared whenever she touched the ball, feeding off her confidence and energy. The battle between these two stars dominated the game. Whenever Sheryl made a big play, Caitlin answered back with one of her own. It was like watching a chess match unfold in real time. Each move calculated, each counterattack precise. By halftime, the scoreboard reflected the tight race. Cheryl's team led by a single point, thanks largely to her relentless effort. But Caitlin was keeping pace, racking up points and earning admiration from fans on both sides. During the break, commentators couldn't stop talking about the showdown unfolding before them. Analysts debated whether age or experience mattered, more in high-stakes games like this. Meanwhile, fans argued passionately online, sharing clips of standout moments and debating who truly deserved the upper hand. Social media was ablaze with memes and GIFs capturing every expression, every dunk, and every heated exchange between the two rivals. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Both teams were neck and neck, trading buckets in a nail-biting finish. Sheryl pushed herself harder than ever, diving for loose balls and contesting every shot. Caitlin matched her step for step, refusing to let fatigue slow her down. With seconds left on the clock, Caitlin sank a clutch three-pointer, putting her team ahead by 1. The arena erupted in cheers, and for a brief moment it seemed like the younger player might walk away with the win. But Sheryl wasn't done yet. In the final play of the game, she drove to the hoop with everything she had, scoring a layup that tied the score and sent the game into overtime. As the buzzer sounded, cameras zoomed in on her face, drenched in sweat, but glowing with determination. Across the court, Caitlin stood tall, nodding in acknowledgement of what they'd both accomplished together. This wasn't just a game anymore. It was a statement, and neither woman was ready to back down. Little did they know, this rivalry was only beginning. Their clash had ignited something bigger, a conversation about ambition, respect, and what it truly means to leave your mark on the sport. Whether they liked it or not, Sheryl and Caitlin were now forever linked, not just as competitors, but as symbols of an era where legends and rising stars collided in spectacular fashion. The final buzzer sounded and the scoreboard lit up with Caitlin's team edging out a narrow victory. The crowd erupted into cheers, celebrating the thrilling overtime finish that had kept them on the edge of their seats. Caitlin stood at center court, her teammates lifting her onto their shoulders as confetti rained down. She raised both arms in triumph, smiling wide as cameras flashed around her. On the other side of the court, Sheryl stood quietly, sweat dripping down her face. Her team surrounded her, offering words of encouragement, but she barely heard them. Her eyes were locked on Caitlin, watching the celebration unfold. When it came time for the post-game press conference, reporters packed the room like sardines, eager to dissect every moment of the game. Caitlin walked in first, fresh off her win, still glowing with adrenaline. She sat down behind the microphone, her demeanor calm and composed. "It was a tough game," she began, leaning forward slightly. "Sheryl and her team pushed us to our limits. I respect what she brings to this sport. Her experience, her leadership. It's something we can all learn from." Her words were diplomatic, measured, almost too perfect. But then came Sheryl. When she entered the room, you could feel the shift in energy. Unlike Caitlin's relaxed posture, Sheryl carried herself with an air of defiance. She adjusted the mic before speaking, her voice steady but tinged with frustration. "First off, congratulations to them," she said, gesturing vaguely toward Caitlin's side of the table. "They played well tonight. But let me be clear. This isn't just about flashy plays or sinking three-pointers. Basketball is about grit, about knowing how to read the game. And trust me, I've been reading it longer than most people here have been alive." The room fell silent for a split second before erupting into murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously, sensing they were witnessing the start of something bigger. One bold journalist raised his hand and asked the question everyone was thinking. "Do you think age played a factor in tonight's outcome?" "Some might say youth has its advantages," Sheryl smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Age doesn't define skill," she shot back without missing a beat. "What defines skill is how much heart you put into the game. Sure, she hit some big shots tonight. But ask yourself, how many of those were team efforts versus solo acts?" She glanced sideways at Caitlin, who sat stone-faced, clearly aware of where this was headed. Caitlin didn't take the bait, at least not publicly. Instead, she responded with grace, keeping her tone light. "I'll always value teamwork over individual stats," she said, flashing a small smile. "But I also believe in taking opportunities when they come. Sometimes, stepping up means making the play yourself. That's part of growing as a player." While their responses remained professional during the presser, the tension simmered beneath the surface. Once the cameras turned off and microphones were muted, things took a sharper turn backstage. As Caitlin made her way to the locker room, she passed by Sheryl, who was standing near a vending machine scrolling through her phone. Their paths crossed briefly, and though neither woman slowed down, their body language spoke volumes. "You know," Sheryl called out suddenly, stopping Caitlin in her tracks. "All those points don't mean much if you're hogging the ball half the time." Caitlin froze, turning slowly to face her. "Excuse me?" she replied, raising an eyebrow. "Hogging the ball or playing smart?" Sheryl stepped closer, lowering her voice but keeping it sharp enough to cut glass. "Playing smart would have meant trusting your teammates more. You think being the hero every night makes you better? Newsflash, it doesn't." For a moment, Caitlin looked taken aback, but she quickly recovered. Folding her arms across her chest, she fired back. "Maybe I wouldn't have to carry the load if certain veterans weren't so busy trying to prove they're still relevant." The comment hit home. Sheryl stiffened, her jaw tightening as she processed the jab. For a second, it seemed like she might say something else or maybe even escalate things further. But instead, she exhaled sharply and shook her head. "You'll figure it out eventually," she muttered, brushing past Caitlin and disappearing down the hallway. Unbeknownst to either of them, someone had recorded the exchange on their phone. Within hours, clips of the argument leaked online, sparking a firestorm of reactions. Fans debated endlessly, some siding with Sheryl's critique of Caitlin's style of play, while others defended Caitlin's right to shine in her prime. Social media exploded with memes and commentary, turning what had started as a heated rivalry into a full-blown cultural phenomenon. Behind closed doors, both women felt the weight of the backlash. Caitlin scrolled through endless notifications, on her phone seeing everything from glowing praise to harsh criticism for disrespecting a legend. Meanwhile, Sheryl wrestled with her own emotions, replaying the confrontation in her mind. Had she gone too far? Was she letting pride cloud her judgment? Despite their public personas, neither athlete was immune to doubt. Late that night, long after the arena lights dimmed and the crowds dispersed, Caitlin sat alone in her hotel room, staring out the window at the city skyline. She replayed the game in her head, the highs, the lows, and especially that tense moment with Sheryl. Deep down, she knew there was truth to some of what Sheryl had said. Her aggressive style of play wasn't just about winning, it was about proving herself, carving out her place among the greats. Across town, Sheryl lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd let her ego get the best of her. Yes, Caitlin was talented, but did she really deserve such venom? Sheryl thought back to her early days in the league, when she'd faced similar scrutiny from older players who questioned whether she belonged. Hadn't she vowed never to become one of those athletes, the kind who clung to relevance at the expense of nurturing the next generation? As dawn broke over the city, neither woman realized how much this rivalry would shape their futures, not just as competitors, but as individuals. What started as trash talk and tension was evolving into something deeper, forcing both of them to confront questions about legacy, growth, and the delicate balance between competition and camaraderie. And while neither would admit it yet, the seeds of mutual respect were beginning to sprout, however reluctantly. The next morning, the air was thick with tension. Both athletes woke up to a storm of notifications, fans dissecting their every move, analysts debating who came out on top in their verbal sparring match, and endless memes poking fun at the whole situation. It felt like the world was watching, waiting for the next chapter in this brewing rivalry. But what no one expected was that fate would bring them face to face again sooner than anticipated. It happened by chance. Or maybe it wasn't entirely random. A private training facility near downtown had been booked for 2 separate sessions, one for Sheryl in the early afternoon, and another for Caitlin later that evening. Neither woman knew the other would be there until they arrived within minutes of each other. The receptionist behind the desk looked visibly nervous as she checked them in, clearly aware of the drama surrounding their names. Sheryl walked into the gym first, her headphones on, completely focused. She started with some light stretching, before moving to dribbling drills. Her movements were deliberate, precise, a testament to years of honing her craft. Every pass, every shot seemed calculated, almost mechanical. She wasn't just practicing. She was reminding herself why she belonged in the conversation about the greatest players of all time. About 20 minutes later, Caitlin entered the gym. At first, neither noticed the other. Caitlin headed straight for the far end of the court, where she began warming up with free throws. The soft thud of the ball hitting the hardwood echoed through the otherwise quiet space. Her rhythm was hypnotic, swish after swish, each shot smoother than the last. But then, something caught Sheryl's eye. Out of the corner of her vision, she spotted Caitlin effortlessly sinking basket after basket. Her competitive instincts kicked in immediately. Without thinking, she stopped mid-dribble and turned to watch. For a moment, she forgot her own workout, mesmerized by the younger player's consistency and focus. Then reality hit her like a splash of cold water. "Not bad," Sheryl muttered under her breath, loud enough for Caitlin to hear. For someone who relies so much on jump shots. Caitlin paused mid-motion, turning to look at Sheryl. There was no mistaking the challenge in her tone. Setting the ball down, Caitlin crossed her arms and raised an eyebrow. "You got something to say?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Sheryl smirked, walking closer to the center of the court. "I'm just saying anyone can make open shots when no one's guarding them. Let's see how you handle pressure." Caitlin tilted her head slightly, considering the jab. Then, without missing a beat, she picked up the ball and spun it on her finger. "Pressure? I thought veterans liked to talk about experience being the key to handling tough situations. Guess I'll have to show you otherwise." And just like that, the unspoken tension between them transformed into action. Before either realized it, they'd agreed to a series of impromptu drills, each designed to test different aspects of their game. They started with three-point shooting, standing side by side at the arc. The rules were simple. Whoever sank the most shots in a minute won the round. Sheryl went first, stepping up confidently. Her form was textbook. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees bent, follow-through smooth. Swish, swish, swish. By the time her minute was up, she'd scored 8 out of 10 attempts. Not bad, especially for someone pushing 40. Then it was Caitlin's turn. She took a deep breath, bounced the ball twice, and let it fly. Her release was quicker, almost fluid, and eerily consistent. 9 out of 10. As the final buzzer sounded, Caitlin grinned triumphantly, while Sheryl clenched her jaw, refusing to acknowledge defeat. Next came dribbling speed tests. Cones were set up in a zigzag pattern across half the court. The goal was to weave through them as quickly as possible, without losing control of the ball. This time, Sheryl took the lead. Years of playing against faster defenders had taught her how to maneuver with precision. She zipped through the course in record time, stopping dramatically at the finish line with a smirk. Caitlin didn't flinch. When it was her turn, she exploded into motion, her feet barely touching the ground as she danced around the cones. She finished just milliseconds behind Sheryl, but the effort left her breathing hard and grinning ear to ear. "Close enough," she teased, tossing the ball toward Sheryl. The final drill was endurance. A full-court sprint followed by a layup, repeated non-stop for 5 minutes. This was where things got personal. Both women pushed themselves to their limits, sweat pouring down their faces as they refused to give an inch. Sheryl relied on sheer willpower, gritting her teeth through fatigue. Caitlin, meanwhile, leaned on her natural athleticism, her legs pumping like pistons even as her lungs burned. By the end of it, both collapsed onto the floor, gasping for air. Neither had officially won the challenge. They were too evenly matched. But the mutual exhaustion created a strange kind of camaraderie. For the first time, they shared a laugh, acknowledging the absurdity of what they'd just put themselves through. As they sat there catching their breath, Sheryl broke the silence. "You're not half bad, kid," she admitted reluctantly. "Still, think my defense could shut you down, though." Caitlin chuckled, wiping sweat from her brow. "Maybe, but I bet I could still find a way to score." For a brief moment, the rivalry faded, replaced by a flicker of respect. Neither said it outright, but both understood. This wasn't just about proving who was better anymore. It was about pushing each other to be the best versions of themselves, even if it meant swallowing a little pride along the way. When they finally left the gym hours later, the encounter stayed with them long after the echoes of bouncing balls faded away. What had started as a clash of egos had evolved into something deeper, a realization that competition doesn't always have to divide. Sometimes it can bring people closer together, even if they don't want to admit it right away. The days following their impromptu training session turned into weeks, and the buzz around Sheryl and Caitlin only grew louder. Every move they made seemed to be under a microscope. Fans dissected their stats, analysts debated their playing styles, and social media became a battleground of opinions. Hashtags like "who wins," "in the end," and "rivalry" or "respect" trended daily, keeping the tension alive even when the two weren't on the same court. Sheryl found herself bombarded with questions everywhere she went. Whether it was during interviews, at charity events, or even while grabbing coffee, people wanted to know, what did she really think about Caitlin? Was this rivalry genuine, or was there something more beneath the surface? At first, Sheryl tried to brush it off, sticking to her usual confident tone. "I've been in this game long enough to know how these things work," she'd say with a shrug. "People will talk no matter what you do." But deep down, the scrutiny weighed on her. She couldn't ignore the fact that some fans, and even fellow players, were starting to question whether her competitive fire had crossed a line. Critics accused her of being bitter, clinging to past glory instead of embracing the new generation. One particularly scathing article titled "Outdated or Underrated" painted her as someone who refused to step aside and let younger talent shine. Reading those words stung, not because they were entirely wrong, but because they forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself. Meanwhile, Caitlin faced her own share of criticism. While many praised her skills and potential, others labeled her arrogant for challenging someone of Sheryl's stature. Some argued that her aggressive style of play lacked teamwork, pointing to moments in games where she'd taken over rather than passing to teammates. Even her coach pulled her aside after one particularly heated practice. "You're talented, no doubt about it," he said firmly. "But leadership isn't just about scoring points. It's about earning trust." Caitlin nodded, absorbing the feedback, but inside she felt conflicted. On one hand, she knew her approach worked. She'd proven that time and again. On the other hand, she couldn't deny the whispers growing louder around her. Was she coming across as selfish? Did people see her as disrespectful to veterans like Sheryl? The thought gnawed at her, especially since she'd grown up idolizing players like Sheryl, studying their moves and dreaming of someday standing alongside them. Amid all the noise, both women struggled to focus on their upcoming games. For Sheryl, every miss felt heavier, every loss more personal. Reporters were quick to point out any misstep, framing it as evidence that age might finally be catching up to her. Caitlin, too, felt the pressure mounting. Her team relied heavily on her to deliver wins, and while she usually thrived under pressure, the constant spotlight began to take its toll. Nights spent scrolling through endless comments left her restless, wondering if she'd ever truly earn the respect she craved. Then came an unexpected turning point. A late-night talk show appearance that neither woman anticipated would change the narrative. It started innocently enough. Both were invited as guests to discuss their recent performances and the ongoing hype surrounding their rivalry. Sitting side by side on the couch, they exchanged polite greetings, though the tension between them was palpable. The host dove right in, asking pointed questions about their infamous gym showdown and leaked arguments. At first, both stuck to rehearsed answers, careful not to stir the pot further. But then, mid-interview, Caitlin surprised everyone, including herself. "Look," she said, leaning forward slightly, her voice softening. "I get why people are fascinated by this whole thing. I mean, we're talking about two players from different generations going head-to-head. That's exciting. But honestly, I have nothing but respect for Sheryl. She paved the way for players like me. Everything I've learned about resilience, about never backing down, that comes from watching her play." The room fell silent. Cameras zoomed in on Sheryl, whose expression shifted from guarded to thoughtful. After a pause, she responded, her tone uncharacteristically reflective. "I appreciate that," she admitted, nodding slowly. "And maybe I've been too hard on her. I remember what it was like starting out, feeling like you have to prove yourself to everyone. Maybe I forgot that for a minute." The audience erupted into applause, sensing a breakthrough moment. The host grinned, clearly thrilled by the unexpected turn of events. "So, does this mean we can expect peace between you two moving forward?" he asked, half-jokingly. Sheryl chuckled, glancing at Caitlin. "Peace might be pushing it," she said with a smirk. "But hey, respect is a good start." Caitlin laughed, shaking her head. "Fair enough." Backstage after the show, the atmosphere felt lighter. As they walked toward their respective cars, Caitlin hesitated for a moment before calling out, "Hey, thanks for saying what you did back there. It means a lot." Sheryl stopped, turning to face her. For the first time, there was no edge in her voice. "Don't mention it," she replied simply. Just don't let all this attention go to your head, all right? They shared a small laugh, the kind that comes when walls finally begin to come down. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not yet, but it was progress. Both walked away that night realizing something important. Their rivalry didn't have to define them. In fact, it could become something greater, a chance to inspire others by showing that competition and respect can coexist. Over the next few days, fans noticed a subtle shift in their interactions. During a joint appearance at a basketball clinic for kids, they stood side by side, offering tips and encouragement without so much as a hint of tension. Social media lit up with praise, celebrating the newfound harmony between the two stars. Even critics softened their stance, acknowledging that sometimes growth happens in unexpected ways. For Sheryl, it was a reminder that legacy isn't just about winning. It's about leaving the game better than you found it. And for Caitlin, it was validation that she didn't have to choose between ambition and humility. By embracing each other's strengths, they discovered something neither had expected: a partnership born out of mutual respect, forged in the heat of competition. Neither woman knew exactly where this journey would lead, but one thing was clear: they were stronger together than apart. And as the world watched, they proved that even the fiercest rivals could find common ground when they focused on what truly mattered: the love of the game. It was a crisp Saturday morning, and the sun cast long shadows across the outdoor basketball court. The kind of day that made you want to grab a ball and shoot hoops just for fun. But this wasn't just any casual pickup game. It was a charity event, aimed at empowering young girls through sports. Hundreds of kids had gathered, their eyes wide with excitement as they watched two legends step onto the court together. Sheryl and Caitlin stood side by side, both wearing matching jerseys emblazoned with the event's logo. They'd been invited to co-captain opposing teams for an exhibition match, a decision that had initially raised eyebrows. Could these two fierce rivals really work together without reigniting old tensions? As they walked out to cheers from the crowd, there was no denying the buzz in the air. Parents whispered to each other about how things had changed since their heated rivalry first made headlines. Kids tugged on their parents' sleeves asking who was better. The organizers kicked off the event with speeches about the importance of mentorship and representation in sports. Both Sheryl and Caitlin listened, intently, nodding along as stories poured in from former players whose lives had been transformed by basketball. When it came time for them to speak, they exchanged a quick glance before taking turns at the microphone. "I didn't grow up with a lot of role models who looked like me," Sheryl began, her voice steady but warm. "So when I got the chance to play, I promised myself I'd give everything I had, not just for me, but for the next generation. These girls deserve to see what's possible." Caitlin followed, her tone softer but equally heartfelt. "When I started playing, I wanted to be just like the people I admired. People like Sheryl." She paused, turning slightly to look at her counterpart. "And now, standing here today, I realize how important it is to lift others up instead of tearing them down. That's what this is all about." Their words resonated deeply with the audience. For many, it felt like closure, a sign that their feud had evolved into something meaningful. But the real magic happened once the game began. From the opening tip-off, it was clear this wouldn't be your typical charity match. Both captains played with intensity, diving for loose balls and hustling on defense as if it were a championship game. Yet there was also laughter, moments where they'd share a smile after a particularly clever move or help each other up after a hard fall. It was competitive, yes, but laced with camaraderie. Midway through the second quarter, something remarkable happened. Sheryl drove toward the basket, drawing defenders like magnets. Just as she prepared to take the shot, she spotted Caitlin open beyond the arc. Without hesitation, she passed the ball. Caitlin caught it mid-stride, squared up, and sank the three-pointer, with ease. The crowd erupted into cheers, not just because of the perfect shot, but because of the unspoken message behind it: teamwork over ego. Later in the game, the roles reversed. Caitlin found herself double-teamed near the sideline, her options limited. Instead of forcing a tough shot, she dished the ball to Sheryl, cutting to the hoop. With a quick spin move, Sheryl laid it in, earning applause from spectators and high fives from her teammates. Cameras captured every moment, zooming in on their expressions, grins shared between plays, nods of approval during timeouts. By halftime, the scoreboard showed a close race, but more importantly, the bond between the two captains was undeniable. During the break, they huddled briefly with their respective teams, strategizing and encouraging younger players. "Don't be afraid to make mistakes," Sheryl told her team. "That's how you learn." Caitlin echoed similar sentiments, adding, "Play smart, but most importantly, have fun." As the game entered its final minutes, the energy reached a fever pitch. Both teams fought tooth and nail, refusing to let up even though it was all in. Good spirit. With less than 30 seconds left, Caitlin's team held a slim lead. Her teammates urged her to take the last shot, but instead she motioned for Sheryl to set a screen. The veteran obliged, creating just enough space for Caitlin to drive inside. But rather than finishing herself, she flipped the ball back to Sheryl for a wide-open layup, the game-winning basket. When the buzzer sounded, the crowd went wild. Players from both sides rushed onto the court, hugging and celebrating as if they'd won a title together. Sheryl and Caitlin met at center court, exchanging a firm handshake that quickly turned into a hug. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment for posterity. Fans chanted their names, blending them into one chant: "Sheryl and Caitlin, Sheryl and Caitlin." Afterward, during the closing ceremony, the two captains addressed the crowd again. This time, their speeches carried a sense of unity neither had shown before. "Today reminded me why we play this game," Sheryl said, her voice thick with emotion. "It's not about stats or trophies. It's about inspiring the next generation to dream bigger than we ever did." Caitlin nodded, picking up where she left off. "And sometimes, inspiration comes from unexpected places, like learning from someone you once saw as a rival." She glanced at Sheryl, who smiled knowingly. "We may come from different eras, but our love for the game connects us, and hopefully it connects all of you too." The kids in attendance hung on to every word, some clutching basketballs signed by their idols. A few brave ones approached, afterward asking for advice or simply thanking them for showing up. One little girl, barely tall enough to reach the hoop, tugged on Sheryl's sleeve. "Are you friends now?" she asked innocently. Sheryl laughed, kneeling down to meet her eye level. "Let's just say we're working on it," she replied, glancing over at Caitlin, who gave a playful wink. As the event wrapped up and the crowd dispersed, Sheryl and Caitlin lingered on the court, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Neither spoke for a while, content to soak in the quiet aftermath of such a meaningful day. Finally, Sheryl broke the silence. "You know," she said, tossing the ball lightly against the pavement, "I used to think mentoring meant teaching someone everything I know. But today taught me something new." "What's that?" Caitlin asked, catching the rebound and spinning it on her finger. "That sometimes," Sheryl continued, "the best way to teach is to listen, to learn from the people around you, even if they challenge you." Caitlin grinned, letting the all drop. "Well, consider me your toughest student." They laughed, the sound echoing softly in the empty gymnasium. For the first time, their rivalry felt like a distant memory, a chapter closed in favor of something far greater. Together, they'd proven that competition doesn't have to divide. It can unite, inspire, and create legacies that extend far beyond the court. Years had passed since that unforgettable charity game, and the world of basketball had evolved in ways no one could have predicted. The sport was bigger than ever, with fans packing arenas worldwide and streaming games from their phones. But, amidst all the changes, one thing remained constant: the legacy of those who paved the way. And now, on a warm summer evening, Caitlin stood at center court surrounded by family, friends, teammates, and fans, as she prepared to say goodbye to the game that had shaped her life. It was her retirement ceremony, a celebration of a career filled with triumphs, challenges, and countless memories. Banners hung from the rafters bearing her name and number, while video montages played on massive screens showcasing her most iconic moments. There were standing ovations, heartfelt speeches, and tears shed by everyone present. Yet, despite the outpouring of love, There was one person whose presence loomed large over the event: Sheryl. When Caitlin first heard that Sheryl would be speaking at the ceremony, she couldn't help but laugh. Of all people, she muttered to herself, shaking her head with disbelief. But deep down she knew it made perfect sense. Their journey, from rivals to reluctant allies to something resembling friendship, was woven into the fabric of her story. Without Sheryl, Caitlin's path might have looked very different. As the lights dimmed and the crowd settled, Sheryl walked onto the court, her steps measured and deliberate. She wasn't the same player who once dominated headlines with fiery trash talk. Time had softened her edges, replacing brash confidence with wisdom earned through experience. Dressed in a tailored suit, she carried herself with grace, though her competitive spirit still lingered in her sharp gaze. Standing behind the podium, Sheryl took a moment to survey the room. Her eyes landed on Caitlin, who sat front and center, smiling nervously. For a second, their gazes locked, and Sheryl felt a wave of nostalgia wash over her. This was the girl who'd challenged her, pushed her, and ultimately forced her to grow, not just as a player, but as a person. "Let me start by saying this is not easy," Sheryl began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Because how do you sum up someone like Caitlin, someone who came into this league like a storm, refusing to back down even when the odds were stacked against her?" The audience chuckled softly, knowing exactly what she meant. Sheryl paused, letting the laughter fade before continuing. "When I first met Caitlin, or rather when I first noticed her, I'll admit I didn't know what to think. Here was this young kid, fearless and talented, taking shots most players wouldn't dare attempt. At first I thought she was reckless, maybe even arrogant. But the more I watched her play, the more I realized something. She wasn't afraid to fail." Her words hung in the air, resonating deeply with everyone in attendance. Caitlin leaned forward slightly, listening intently as Sheryl spoke. "And let me tell you, that's rare," Sheryl continued. "In this game, and in life, we're taught to play it safe, to avoid risks that might cost us. But Caitlin never did that. She took chances, made mistakes, and learned from them. And because of that, she inspired millions of people, including me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Few expected such vulnerability from someone known for her toughness. Even Caitlin seemed surprised. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Sheryl went on, her tone growing warmer. "There were times when we clashed. Times when I questioned whether she respected the game enough or whether she understood the weight of the legacy she was stepping into. Looking back, I realize now that I was wrong. Caitlin didn't need to understand my era. She needed to create her own. And she did. Brilliantly. She..." Paused again, glancing down at her notes before looking directly at Caitlin. "I've always believed that greatness isn't just about winning championships or breaking records. It's about leaving the game better than you found it. About inspiring others to dream bigger, work harder, and believe in themselves. And, Caitlin, you've done that tenfold." By now, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Fans clapped, some wiping away tears, while Caitlin blinked rapidly, trying to hold herself together. When Sheryl finished her speech, the entire arena rose to its feet, cheering louder than ever. As she stepped away from the podium, she walked over to Caitlin, extending her hand. For a moment, Caitlin hesitated. Then, instead of shaking hands, she stood up and pulled Sheryl into a tight hug. The gesture brought another round of applause, sealing the bond they'd forged over years of competition and mutual respect. When it was Caitlin's turn to speak, she approached the microphone with gratitude written all over her face. "First off," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "thank you to everyone here tonight. This means more to me than I can put into words." She paused, scanning the crowd before focusing on Sheryl. "And thank you, especially to Sheryl, because without her I wouldn't be standing here today." The admission caught Sheryl off guard, but she smiled warmly, nodding in acknowledgement. "I grew up watching her play," Caitlin continued. "She was my hero, the reason I fell in love with basketball. So imagine how surreal it felt when I suddenly found myself competing against her. At first I thought she hated me. Honestly, sometimes I wondered if I deserved the criticism she gave me. But looking back, I see now that she was challenging me to be better, to dig deeper, to prove myself, not just to her, but to myself. Her voice cracked slightly and she took a deep breath before continuing. What started as rivalry turned into respect and eventually into friendship. Sheryl taught me that being great isn't about shutting others down. It's about lifting them up. And for that, I'll always be grateful. As Caitlin wrapped up her speech, she invited Sheryl back to the stage. Together, they stood side by side, holding replica jerseys commemorating their contributions to the sport. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment forever, a symbol of two generations coming together to celebrate not just individual achievements, but the shared love of the game. Later that night, after the crowds had dispersed and the lights dimmed, Caitlin and Sheryl lingered on the court, reminiscing about everything they'd been through. They talked about the highs and lows, the heated arguments and quiet breakthroughs. Both admitted they'd grown in ways they never expected, thanks in large part to each other. You know, Caitlin said, spinning a basketball on her finger, people will probably keep comparing us for years to come. Who was better? Who left a bigger mark? Stuff like that. Sheryl laughed, leaning against the scorer's table. Let them. Comparisons are inevitable. But at the end of the day, it's not about who's better. It's about what we leave behind. Caitlin nodded, tossing the ball toward the hoop. It swished through the net with ease, echoing softly in the empty arena. Yeah, she agreed. And I think we've both done our part. They stood there for a while longer, enjoying the silence and the memories. Though their playing days were behind them, their impact would live on, in the hearts of fans, in the stories told by future generations, and in the countless lives they'd touched along the way. As they finally walked off the court together arm in arm, neither woman doubted the truth of Sheryl's words. Legacy wasn't about numbers or accolades. It was about connection. And in that moment, they knew theirs was secure.